Hey, everybody, it's Adnan Burke from ESPN, and you're listening to two of my favorites, Graham and Chris, out of left field right now.
Hey, guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again. The baseball season has ended, and unfortunately, I owe Chris a drink because my predictions this postseason sucked. So, damn me. And the baseball.
To be fair,
I
only got one right. It just happened to be the one that counted.
Yeah. I'm thinking, okay, we're good. But in my defense, because that's what we do, we have to defend why we were wrong. Let's just be honest. I did say 4-2, but it all depended on how well Yu Darvish pitched, and that fantastic Yu Darvish ERA of a 21.60 didn't quite hold up there on 8 earned runs, 9 hits, 2 walks, no strikeouts, and 3 1/3 innings pitched.
So what you're telling me is that the Dodgers can't win the World Series if their pitching gives up runs. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm basically saying that that I caveated my horrific pick of I'm picking them to win, but if I'm wrong, here's why. So hey, I was wrong, but here's why. I'm good with it. So let's put the ball into play for a final
time. At least there was a caveat there because you were starting to sound a lot like John Madden there for a minute.
Whoa.
Thank you for being blatantly obvious, John.
Let's just simmer down over there, killer. Let's put the ball in play one last time on the regular season. Of course, we have I'm not really sure is a possibility, guys, and we'll discuss this. We may have the next couple of weeks off. Some things coming up where we may be a little indisposed. So we may give you a couple of weeks break from out of left field, then we'll come back in. But like I said, let's put the ball in play. We are brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network. Make sure to check them out at thegruelingtruth.net and at Grueling Truth on Twitter. All kinds of good stuff coming up with, obviously, the NCAA rankings coming out from the playoff committee, power rankings, all the good stuff, your NFL teams as well, your fantasy stuff, everything you're looking for, plus boxing, Canadian football. If you're looking for it, a good possibility. If it's not curling or bowling, it's going to be on thegruelingtruth.net.
Hey, Graham, did you know that it's 2009 again?
Huh?
Georges St. Pierre is now the champion of the UFC once again, and so it feels a whole lot like 2009 again.
Very nice. Yeah, except that I think in 2009 the Yankees were the world champions, and the Houston Astros have.
We don't talk about that.
The Houston Astros have brought the Commissioner's Trophy back to the city of Houston, a city ravaged, obviously, by Hurricane Harvey. Houston strong was a huge thing. They were displaced. They played in Tampa. Obviously after the hurricanes there, when the city was flooded, a lot of rebuilding still to do. But man, this coming in big picture, it is still one of, I think, the best World Series that you and I have seen. In the time that we've been watching baseball, I still think going back to the 7-game set between the Giants and the Royals was a fantastic series back to back. Last year, Game 7 was great. The rest of the series, not. This series, 1 through 6 were mind-boggling, and then Game 7 was kind of,
Game 7 was the kind of game.
The little pull poppers. Then your popper doesn't really do anything, and you're like, oh. I mean,
Game 7 was the kind of game you expect to get out of these two teams on a Tuesday afternoon in July. Not
a getaway
on
day game.
A Tuesday afternoon, not on a Tuesday afternoon in November.
Yeah,
and I think
it had that getaway day feel. You're right.
Right. Neither of those teams. It felt like neither of those teams wanted to be there. Neither of those teams were really pushing as hard as they possibly could. And the Astros came out on top based on some early heroics, and actually based on some poor ball play by LA with that early error in the first inning.
Error by Bellinger, yeah. I think that's really what – that to me kind of set the tone. I mean, George Springer, MVP. I mean, you know, I laugh because we've known each other at this point almost, 10 years? You know, and unfortunately for our significant others, we think very much the same way. So, you know, for the world around us, that, you know, that's just, I feel bad for everybody else. But hey, you know what? In our little orbit, it all works out. And as I'm sitting here going, man, George Springer is going to be the MVP. And I was about to text you, what do you think? And then across my phone comes, Springer's the MVP if the Astros win.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look back at this series, and the question was going to be, if the Astros don't win, who the hell is going to be the MVP? Do you still give it to Springer? Because nobody from the Dodgers really stood out. Now, you know, let's go back to Game 1, and we'll take you through it here on Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham. The Dodgers win 3-1. Kershaw has a phenomenal Game 1. Out pitches Dallas Keuchel. Kenley Jansen gets the save. It's 2.5 hours, and I'm looking at my clock going, I'm not going to bed yet for work. It's 10:30 and the game's over? I mean, who would have thought in the day and age of, you know, consistent bullpen changes and you know, back-to-back changes and moves for, you know, batter to batter, that we would have seen that. And, of course, we had the stupid idea that maybe this is going to be, you know, a series where we don't have that. And then, of course, Game 2 through 7, that's exactly what we had. But, I mean, you know, it was one of those games. Kershaw came in. To me, at that point, he had really silenced the doubters. He had a really, really, you know, solid championship series in a good divisional series until the 7th inning. And the 7th inning is always kind of the Achilles heel, it has seemed, for him coming into the World Series 2017. You know, pitches fantastic, goes I think all the way through the 7th inning, which, you know, is one of those things that I think Dave Roberts was, all right, hey, you know what, we're going to get you through this. He goes he goes 7 full, allows 3 hits, 1 run. Just a great night for him. Morrow comes in, gets the hold, and Jansen goes away with the save. And he outduels Dallas Keuchel, who gives up 6 hits and 3 earned runs. You know, both pitchers, head-to-head, were fantastic. The biggest thing that screamed to you and me in Game 1 was when Kershaw was just mowing down guys. Strikeout here, strikeout. 11 Ks in Game 1, and we're talking to her going, man, if this is the Kershaw that we're going to see, I mean, Verlander is the only hope to steal a game. If you can go back tied to Houston, we saw how well Houston played at home. You know, it gives them at least an opportunity to go back with maybe a bit of a lead to L.A., but then the wheels kind of came off of Kershaw. So take us through Game 1, what your thoughts were, and move us through, obviously, Game 2 where Verlander shined and on into the trip to Houston.
Well, coming into Game 1, I think you and I had both discussed how important this game was for, not just for this World Series, to set a tone in this World Series, but also, like you said, for Clayton Kershaw's legacy. Yes, he pitched well throughout the postseason prior. Yes, he pitched pretty well throughout the postseason last year. He looks like he's getting that monkey off his back. He looks like he's really going to finally show everybody that he can be a good, solid postseason pitcher, just as solid as he is in the regular season. And I think that in Game 1, he came out there and just put an exclamation point on that. 11 strikeouts through 7 innings, one earned run that he gave up in the 4th inning, and
a 3-hitter for
not
the
to mention
for the Stros
the
in
support
Game
that he
1.
was getting. What's that?
3 hits. Stros hit
100
in Game 1. You had individual hits from Bregman, from Reddick, and then also from Altuve, who was really pressing. And we'll get into that here in just a minute.
And, of course, the Bregman hit was the only run of the game for the Astros. He hit the solo shot in the 4th inning. But then you look at his support. You're talking about Justin Turner hit a go-ahead 2-run shot. which, by the way, I don't know. Here's a little tidbit for you. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Justin Turner, when he hit that 2-run home run, tied Duke Snider for the most career runs batted in Dodgers postseason history. That was his 25th and 26th RBI of the postseason, which is it makes it obvious why he shared MVP honors with Taylor there in the NLCS. But
and you know what gets me about Turner? How do the Mets feel sitting back on their couch as they have for the last couple of years,
right,
and knowing that you let Justin Turner go, who you thought was not going to do a whole lot in his career, and Daniel Murphy now sits in your divisional rivals clubhouse, and you're just looking around like, dear God, what do we do? What do we do?
To be fair to Dallas Keuchel, it's not like Dallas Keuchel pitched poorly. He let the Dodgers jump on him early. They scored that run in the first inning, but he blanked them again up until that 2-run shot in the sixth inning by Turner. He only allowed 3 runs on 6 hits and 6 2/3. Any other time of the year, any other place, any other time, that's a quality start from your starting pitcher. Unfortunately, when you have Brandon Morrow coming in, he throws a scoreless 8th inning, and then Kenley Jansen comes in to shut it down. And you said, and I agreed, as soon as Kenley Jansen came in the game, you said this game is over. And I agreed with that. I think when Kenley Jansen comes in the 9th inning, that's the end of the game. For the most part, as far as the Dodgers are concerned, that's a W. It was 2 hours, 28 minutes from first pitch to last pitch, which is the shortest World Series game since Game 4 in 1992. Going into Game 2, everything started to look like deja vu. This time, the Houston Astros struck first in the 3rd inning. You've got Hill on the mound for the Dodgers. You got Verlander on the hill for the Astros, and Verlander just proceeds to blank the Dodgers.
Verlander was on the hill while Hill was on the hill?
Yeah, they were both on the hill. Sorry, would it sound better to you if I said that Hill was on the bump while Verlander was on the hill? Because that makes it sound awkward to me.
Did you really have... Folks, I apologize. Moving on, I would have gone with, Hill was on the hill and Verlander was on the bump, but, you wanted to go there. But, yeah, you move over into Game 2, and it's like, okay, here's Verley. This is, to me, that was the series game. And that sounds dumb in Game 2, but the way the Dodgers had played coming into the World Series and the way that Kershaw pitched, we knew how good Hill could be. We've seen Hill be fantastic. And what gets me is it felt like there was really just not a lot of love and trust in Hill long term. And then, Astros get a run in the 3rd. The Dodgers get a run in the 5th. Like, all right, cool, 1-1, here we go. All of a sudden, a 2 spot in the 6th, and the Dodgers are leading. And then extra innings began, and those became 2 of the biggest words in this series, extra innings.
Well, and the thing about Game 2 was when that 2-run shot, when Corey Seager hits that 2-run home run in the bottom of the 6th inning, the first thing that went through my head was, well, this looks exactly like Game 1. It was tied 1-1 going into the 6th, 2-run shot in the 6th. Now all of a sudden it's 2-1 Dodgers. This looks exactly like last night. Or is that what we're going to get? And it felt like maybe that's what we were going to get because the Astros come out and get blanked again in the 7th, put 1 on the board to tie it in the 8th, and then all hell breaks loose. Suddenly, the go-ahead run crosses the plate in the 9th inning. The tying run crosses the plate in the 9th inning and in the top of the 9th, and suddenly we're going into extra innings, which I think you were asleep at this point, right? Because it was sometime near midnight there on the East Coast, and I was sending you
Game 2
message after message.
Yeah, but both Game 2 and Game 5 ended at like 1-something. And the worst thing, the worst thing in the world is waking up to a message from you anyway. But then when I know that it's the World Series, and I see like 6 missed messages, like crap. I know something has happened. And then it ended up being about 4 somethings that happened. And thankfully, and I give credit to MLB Network that they actually would replay in like a 2-hour stint Game 2 and Game 5, and pretty much just gave you everything that happened from, the normal East Coast bedtime on. So you really kind of were able to watch, and even though knowing the outcome, it was just crazy to see the way that this back and forth happens. And then at the end of the day, you get Kenley Jansen's first blown save of the World Series. McCarthy takes the loss, and you're just like, okay, so you're telling me that Verlander goes 6 innings with 2 hits, and this game goes all the way to the 11th inning because and the bullpens begin to go, and that was the moment to me. And I told you this, that when I saw that Dave Roberts had to use his entire bullpen, that was what changed the series. Yes, having a win is great. And I think that for the Astros to get a win in L.A. was going to be huge. It's why I thought Dallas Keuchel didn't nearly pitch as well as the numbers showed. But again, a Keuchel at 70% of what is his perfect night is better than almost 85% of pitchers in baseball at their best. So it kept the game close. Here, once Roberts was forced into the use of that pen, and you're thinking, okay, he didn't plan for this, that to me was where everything began to change, because now the way he is going to use the pen and the way that he used that bullpen, to me, there were a lot of question marks. And to see that Rich Hill in both Game 2 and Game 7 came out so darn early, it just makes you wonder, I think Hill came out in Game 6, why the lack of trust in Hill after the 4th inning? What was it that had you concerned? Because you can't plan for extra innings.
Right, exactly. Because you don't plan for extra innings. What you do is you plan to win the game in the 27 outs you're given, and then if you don't win the game in the 27 outs you're given, then you work on a plan to win it on any extra innings that you get. But what the great thing about Game 2 for me, aside from all of the action that happened from the top of the 8th on, was here's where we see George Springer really start to emerge as the front runner, in my opinion, for MVP. He turned it on late in Game 2. He hit that 2-run shot in the top of the 11th to take the lead, to drive in the leading run. And he's never cooled off. He never cooled off for the rest of the series. He came out and he just pounded away. And I think he earned every single bit of that trophy starting in that game.
Without a doubt. And 5 home runs from a leadoff man. I mean, it shows you just how much the leadoff position has changed and how the game as a whole right now is in flux. We look at as crazy as it sounds, in Game 2, the Astros had 8 strikeouts. That's it. 11 strikeouts for the Dodgers. Okay, so as big as that is, Springer he had an eye on the ball, an eye for the baseball, and I mean, it was, I know you hate the word clutch, but the ability to make big hits, to put good wood on the ball, and to make things happen for that team. But the thing in this game, and I mentioned obviously going through that entire bullpen, but there's one number in this game that screams to me, and I think it's really where the fall began. That number is 2. That's the innings pitched by Kenley Jansen.
Right.
Roberts kept trying to have Jansen throw 2 innings, get 6 outs. We know that the World Series is it's a microcosm of 162 games in a small little sample. And the great thing about Game 7 is you've had the entire series, you've seen everything. Game 7 doesn't feel like that letdown. It's the difference in kind of a wild card game where it's just if something goes your way, it doesn't go your way, you can be in or out. But Game 7 is like, okay, here we go. But Dave Roberts both managers, and I heard Buck Showalter say this on Mike and Mike earlier this past week, is that you basically manage in 4 different ways. You manage one way in spring training, you manage one way in the regular season, you manage one way in September with expanded rosters, and you manage one way in October, which is screwy. But these pitchers have not been consistently used in this odd flow of going to bring you in, we're going to wait, we're going to, and it just ended up not working for him. And to me, that, his attempt to force Jansen into, big time, innings, 29 pitches for him in game 2 after he closed out game 1. You get a travel day, that's great, but these guys have to warm up. We know they're throwing probably 15, 20 pitches plus whatever they're doing on the hill. It just, to me, that was kind of the beginning of where it got screwy. And then we go into Houston, and we know how good the Astros were at home. And that was when I said, could you imagine that if the Astros lose this World Series, they will have won only 2 games in the entire, and in this case, they won only 3 games in the entire postseason in 2017 away from Houston. The clinching game of Boston, Game 2 of the World Series, and Game 7 of the World Series. That's it.
No, they won. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Three total games away from home in the postseason.
That's right, because
that's
both
crazy.
They and the Yankees were undefeated at home.
Yep. Yeah.
You also realize that by winning 2 out of those 3 games at home, that the Houston Astros went through the entire postseason and lost only 1 home game the whole time, which is incredible. And game no less incredible than game 2. It was just as much fun to watch. The Astros jumped all over you, Darvish.
Yeah.
And you had said that was going to be where Los Angeles needed to hang its hat. Darvish was the peg.
Yep.
Darvish was the peg, and unfortunately, he wasn't up to the challenge. They jumped all over him. They had scored 4 runs in the second inning, and LA just wasn't able to come back from it. Though they made a valiant effort. It ended up 5-3, but Darvish takes the loss. Lance McCullers, who didn't pitch well really either, he only pitched 5 1/3, gave up 3 runs on 4 hits. Not his best outing of the postseason. Not terrible, good enough to beat a bad Darvish. Going into Game 4, here we are again. Now we have Alex Wood and Charlie Morton, and they're going head to head. Morton again shows that he can pitch in the postseason, but so does Alex Wood, in my opinion. I mean, you're talking about a pitcher that, if I said which pitcher is going to do well in a Game 4 situation, Alex Wood's not the first pitcher on that lineup, on that rotation to come to mind. He goes 5 scoreless, doesn't give up a run until the 6th inning.
Let me ask you this. Did it surprise you that Dave Roberts wanted to use Kenta Maeda out of the pen instead of using him as your primary 4th starter and having Wood be your bullpen guy in the series? Did you like the Wood on the bump and letting Maeda be your pen guy throughout as kind of being your long relief pen guy when necessary?
Well, like it or not, in both cases with both pitchers, it turned out to be a pretty good decision. Wood only gave up 1 hit in 5 2/3, and it happened to be that Springer home run.
The Springer dinger.
Yeah. But Maeda came out of that pen and pitched lights out on more than one occasion. I mean, Maeda had some good pitching coming out of the bullpen. So does it look like the best thing to do in retrospect? Yes. Does it look like the best thing to do leading into the series? No, you think Kenta Maeda should be the starter because that's the guy that starts all the time. Put Alex Wood in the bullpen, let him come out and get the long relief time. But I think Dave Roberts.
To me, we end up getting 2 quality starts, just shy of 6 and just over 6 from Wood and Morton respectively. And then we see Ken Giles after a couple, we see Will Harris blow a save. Davinsky comes in. But the big thing ends up being here that Ken Giles the wheels came off that guy in the World Series. Takes the loss, goes to 0-2 in the postseason, an 11.74 ERA, gives up 3 earned runs on just 2 hits. And the Dodgers hang a 5 spot in the 9th, come away with that 6-2 win, which, it makes you concerned. But then you also turn around and go, okay, we know Keuchel is next, but after the way that we saw Kershaw pitch, if Kershaw's on, if everybody's quiet, then they should go back with a 3-2 series lead to LA, and all should be said and done. And that's pretty much what we thought was going to happen. And then Game 5 showed up, and then
right.
that's all. Game 5 showed up.
Right, and Game 5 was just it was a slobber knocker. There's no other way to put it. This is 2 teams who are throwing their aces, both throwing aces at the same time, and yet one guy gets knocked out after 3 2/3. The other one pitches only 4 2/3, allows 6 runs on 4 hits and 3 walks, and immediately you think, well, there goes the whole idea of getting the monkey off his back. Because he comes out and he does exactly what you start to expect Clayton Kershaw to do in the postseason, and that is give up big hits at key moments. And these teams just jumped all over each other, and they didn't stop jumping until the end of the game, when there was a walk-off hit that ended it at a 12-13 score. And this was 5 hours plus of game that was parts of it drug on, but really the longest part of this game was watching them go through pitcher after pitcher after pitcher, because their starters came out so early, and the guys that they brought in to replace them, well, they got jumped on too.
Right.
Houston scores 4 in the 4th. They score 4 in the 7th.
7 pitchers on each side. 7 pitchers.
Los Angeles had 3 3-run innings in this game. Los Angeles scored in all but the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 10th.
And that's the thing, to me, and I know this sounds bad because, we were to a point lauding Keuchel's night in Game 1, but to me it's a little worse than I expected Keuchel to be, but it was kind of par for the course for what I had seen in Game 1. To me, like I said, in watching him, I saw more mistakes that he got away with, in my opinion. He was leaving the ball in bad position. He was missing his spots, but his stuff is good enough to where even when you miss your spots, guys are going to have a hard time hitting you. That's what I saw in Game 1. So to me, in Game 5, these guys just didn't miss. Like, okay, they spotted Kershaw 3-run lead. He was dealing with the 11 strikeouts. Here we go. Let's get back to it. And then Kershaw walks 3, only strikes out 2, and then all of a sudden it just blows up on him in the 4th inning, like you said. They started trading runs for runs back and forth. Okay, what's going to happen next? And it continued. And that is where the home field advantage is huge. The launch angle of Carlos Correa's home run shot. You watch the slow-mo replay. His bat barrel is so far under that baseball. I watched it, and I'm like, oh, what are they showing this swing for? That's the swing they're talking about? And I start watching him, and he's kind of looking around. It's like, nothing went out. Oh, sweet. It was the weirdest thing. But then throughout this entire series, now, yes, granted, that game, Jose Altuve, 3 for 5, hits 4 ribs. But, man, for the most part, Correa, 3 for 5. He goes, he has 3 ribbies. But for the most part, at least to me, and I know that, to some I think I was a bit in the minority, but Correa hit 276 for the series. Altuve hit 194 for the series. Those two, plus Cody Bellinger, had the ugliest overall series to me. And I know that we're going to get into 6 and 7 here in a minute when we go to L.A. I mean, how cool was it watching Vin Scully, bring out Fernando Valenzuela? I mean, all that stuff, it was great. Scully is a god amongst men, in some respects. I mean, that I was tongue in cheek, but man, the way that Bellinger and Altuve and Correa pressed, the kind of swings that we watched Altuve take so far out of the zone. I mean, and I'm not being funny here, but, in our talks, he was swinging at strikes that were being called in your adult men's game. Way outside, just, one-handing the barrel around it. Just, it seemed like he had no vision. He was so hyped up trying to make something happen and do what he had been doing that he lost the ability to do what he had been doing in the NLCS and DS.
Well, coming into Game 6 was, I think, probably one of the best must-win games that I've seen in a long time. I thought after that Game 5 that was just so long, so time-consuming, and so many runs scored, I really came into this Game 6 going, I don't know if I can take that. I just don't know if I can handle that. Justin Verlander and Rich Hill back pitching again for the Dodgers and for the Astros. Springer again leads off the scoring for the night with another home run, his third in as many games. And Justin Verlander
the only
comes
run
out,
the Astros got.
Right. And again, the only run the Astros got. And Justin Verlander comes out and just pitches a really, really good game. I mean, was it enough to win that game? No. But Justin Verlander went 5 2/3 and set the Houston Astros up with the ability to be able to still win that game. Never let it get out of control. He gave up the 2 runs, but he pitched 6 2/3 with 9 strikeouts in the second game, and just came out and had a great outing, kept them in contention, and the bats just didn't ever come alive for Houston in that game. The bats just never woke up, and it wasn't really with Rich Hill that it was responsible for that. He pitched 4 2/3, struck out 5, allowed 4 hits, gave up the 1 dinger to Springer. But in reality, again, we see Hill and no confidence in him going past that 4th inning or that 5th inning, despite only being down by 1 run.
And that was, again, that's the weird thing to me. I mean, Hill pitched very well, in his outings. And you mentioned Verlander. You're right. Verlander put those guys in a great spot to make things happen. Only 6 hits. They had 1 RBI, 9 strikeouts. You got 2 strikeouts from Verlander. Okay, whatever. I don't care. I don't count that. 2 strikeouts from Reddick, who continued to have an abysmal postseason. A strikeout from McCann. McCann, for all of his leadership behind the plate, which makes him absolutely invaluable, had a really rough series with the stick. It just didn't seem to pan out for him long term. Gurriel goes 0 for 4 or goes 1 for 4. We'll get into him here in just a minute, obviously. Correa with a strikeout, Altuve with a strikeout, Springer with 1, but he also had the RBI. And this kind of perpetuated the cycle that we had seen where the Astros are either flat or flying high. There was really no in-between for these guys. The majority, even though, 7 runs here, they had five in a win, 2 in a loss, the 13 here. I mean, you never kind of knew what was going to happen. You never felt like there was no consistency. It was kind of a hit or miss. Okay, this is going to be a big inning. Nope, it's a flat one. Oh, big inning. You never felt like, not saying that you know what's going to happen in Major League Baseball, but it just felt weird. It's the best way I can describe it.
Right. But it was a great game to watch. It was a good game. It was a great part of this really amazing World Series that these two teams were working on. The first time since 1931 that you have two teams with 100 wins going into a Game 7. And so you expect huge things out of this Game 7. You expect this Game 7 to be a battle of two titans. It's either going to be a knockdown, drag-out, score fest, or it's going to be a nothing until somebody makes a mistake pitching duel. And it just let everyone down.
I agree.
It was McCullers comes out and goes 2 1/3. Darvish comes out and goes 1 2/3.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I started off the game and you were at your basketball practice. I know you're coaching
right.
Your high school team, which I think is that's neat. It's something different, new way to see a game that you haven't done a lot of. But to me, the Bellinger thing, and it's odd, but that to me set the tone the whole game. Okay, like, is this going to be that kind of funky game? Because we have seen poor play on both sides throughout the season. Like, all right, is this how it's going to be? And then Darvish just kept getting whacked around. It's like, what in the world is going on here, dude? I mean, you were lights out coming into the postseason. You were a fantastic pickup, and instead he gives up 4 earned runs or 5 total runs, 4 of them earned. He walks 1, gets no strikeouts in an inning and 2/3, and then away you go. They had Jansen pitch 2 innings the night before. Now, granted, he only took him 19 pitches because the Astros lineup just wasn't making anything happen. But McCullers comes out, Peacock goes for 2, and aside from that 1 run from Charlie Morton in the 9th, which, I mean, let's be honest, the way that this game has gone, that 1 run happens. It's like, okay, did the faucet just get turned? Is the hose about to just spew water everywhere, and it's going to be, just vomiting of runs? And instead it was like, okay, Astros win. Good for them. Really wish it had been, and that's why it was so weird from last year, a series, Game 7. I mean, on the edge of your seat, sitting up, yelling at the TV. You're yelling at the TV games 1 through 6, and then Game 7 is like you're yelling, just asking for some drama. So here's the thing.
Right, and
go ahead.
You just want something to happen to make this seem like the type of end to such an amazing series that it needs to be. And it just never gets there. It never happens. And to be fair, when McCullers comes out and hits 4 batters in 2 1/3, the first thing you think is, okay.
Turner twice.
Right. The first thing you think is, okay, neither of them are on. So maybe this is going to be really bad. Or maybe this is going to be another knockdown, drag-out game like Game 5 was. And it just never got there. Instead, this time it was the Los Angeles
How good are the
Dodgers
bullpens really going to be?
Right.
So that brings us to the biggest drama, I guess, of the World Series. And I think having a 7-game series certainly helped Major League Baseball avoid, for the most part, what was happening here. Obviously, Game 3. You had games 4 and 5 in back-to-back nights. So having games continuously kind of helps you get away from some of the issue. But Yuli Gurriel showed his fourth point of contact, which you and I, that's,
right.
military term for your backside. And, and made a very racially charged, racially insensitive gesture towards Yu Darvish, who, although he came from Japanese baseball, is a Chinese born human being. And then obviously made some comments in Spanish that referred to him, I think it was a Chinese boy, I think is what it means roughly translated, which is obviously basically a racial slur in Spanish. So, seen on TV, you can say it wasn't on the field of play, but it was at the ballpark. It was seen by millions. Baseball has to do something. Word came down from the commissioner's office that Gurriel would be suspended 5 games beginning in 2018. His reasoning was basically that they wanted to get salary, and the Astros will donate that basically to organizations that are designed and created to combat the type of actions that Yuli Gurriel showed on national TV. But then a lot of people are up in arms saying, well, if you want to make a statement, why are you allowing this guy to play in the World Series? Suspend him for the World Series. I agreed. I don't think you suspend him 5 games or for the rest of the World Series, but I think sitting him down for at least 1 game was warranted. You think differently.
It's not that I think differently. It's that I think you have to realize the position that Major League Baseball is in. There's 2 factors that lead to me thinking that the 5-game suspension at the beginning of next season is the correct response to this. 1, Yu Darvish himself came out and said that he doesn't want him suspended for the World Series. He doesn't want to win that way. He wants the best team on the field that they can field.
He didn't win that way.
That's true. It didn't turn out the way Darvish wanted it to, but Darvish doesn't want the World Series without the best team on the field. The Dodgers don't want to do it. This could have been a completely different series had Yuri Gurriel been sat down. I think he should have been sat down. Yes, I do. I really do. I don't think that anybody should be able to get paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game and again get away with making completely racist comments and remarks on national television. I don't think that should happen. The other thing, though, is you're never going to sit him down. It happened in Game 3. You're never going to get a seat out of him because they suspend him. He immediately appeals. The appeal could take to the series. In fact, it would have taken the rest of the series. He never sees the bench, and then now you're in a position where you're trying to change the punishment 1 game in World Series to 5 games at the beginning of the season when you can just give him those 5 games, take his money away from him, because remember, his salary doesn't involve the postseason. Postseason money is bonus money. So you're not taking his salary, you're not taking money away from him for sitting him in the postseason. He still got his entire salary. For 5 games in the beginning of the season next year, that's a decent chunk of change that you can take out of his pocket, and you can use that money to increase education, increase awareness, increase, the support the type of groups that can combat this sort of thing through those ideas. I just think that this would have been a mire for Major League Baseball to attempt to sit Yuri Gurriel in the World Series.
See, here's where I disagree in the fact that we saw Draymond Green be suspended for a game during the NBA Finals 2 years ago.
Kicked the guy in the balls, dude.
I understand.
After getting warned, and after getting 2 technicals, that's an automatic sit. It's different. He can't appeal that.
Here's my point. We have, at first, your biggest point to me was the fact of they don't want to win this way. Baseball doesn't want to have that kind of effect on the outcome of the World Series. But to me, Gurriel making that kind of foolish, insensitive, ignorant remark and gesture deserves a one-game suspension on the biggest stage. Hell, if you want to do it, give him a game in the World Series and then 4 games in the regular season so you get your salary and that. But if you want to make a statement that you're not going to tolerate that kind of stuff, then give him the suspension, have your team ready to hear the appeal immediately, be able to hand it down within game 4 or at least by game 5. He sits the game, you travel, you go back to L.A., he's ready to go. That to me would have been the easiest way because you're the only show in town. You don't have to hear any other appeals from any other team. That is the only thing. That's the only thing. So to me, it would have been a lot easier than I think it's made out to sound like for them to hear it, to make a choice. Yes, it should be held like it, or carried out the way it should have been when the Bryce Harper and Hunter Strickland crap happened, and Strickland had a month to keep playing until the appeal was heard. I agree, and this was a chance to show that we can hear it, we can do it, we can adjudicate it, and be done.
That their appellate panel wasn't hearing a whole lot of appeals in May when Strickland should have been sitting on the bench and instead he was playing in baseball games. There weren't a whole lot of other appeals on their table. So that being said, the fact that in a perfect world, yes, you can hand down an appeal in 24 or 48 hours, it's not going to work. You and I both know that that's not how Major League Baseball is going to do it because they have to give it a certain amount of weight and they have to weigh it a certain way. Is this something we can suspend for? Is this something we should suspend for? Is this something that is going to get a response from the player that the kind of response from the player that we want to get? I think in my opinion, the answer to all those questions is yes. It is something you can suspend for, something you should suspend for. And I agree that suspending him during the World Series is the thing that's going to get the biggest response from him. But when you have a group of businessmen sitting in a room trying to decide not whether or not this is going to get a response from the player that's the response they're looking for, but how much money it's going to cost them in revenue, that's what the appellate panel is. It's a group of businessmen. And when you group of businessmen sitting in a room, they're going to drag their feet, let Yuri Gurriel play, and take their punishment in the off season. And instead of doing that, they hand down a punishment that he's not likely to try to appeal. It gets the job done. I don't disagree with that.
No, you're completely right, and I think more so now than when we first discussed it. Obviously, we preface all of this off air. I think that the way that you approached the discussion is different than the way that we discussed it at first. I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I just it's one of those things where you'd like to see baseball, kind of grab the game and say, look, we don't want to tolerate this. We don't want to accept it. So here's what we're going to do. And I wish that is how it would have gone. Granted, I love the way that, in Game 7, Gurriel tipped his hat, took his time. Obviously he got, he was booed pretty consistently, but Darvish kind of, nodded back to him. There was a very good show of sportsmanship there and hopefully respect. And I hope at some point, I hope this does kind of open Gurriel's eyes to the way the world is now and the changes that are happening, and hopefully a little bit of ignorance is less in the world after this is all said and done. So a great World Series. George Springer takes home the MVP, and I think the beauty of it wasn't mired by that.
I think that Yuri Gurriel definitely learned something from this experience, and I hope he did. But yes, and I don't want to sound like punishing Yuri Gurriel is going to mire the World Series. In one sense, yes, it's going to make it about that.
No, what I meant by that was that I'm appreciative of the fact that what Gurriel did not kind of mire the World Series didn't have this cloud of racially charged comments,
right.
Going. I mean,
right.
Yes, it happened a little bit, and the next day, but for the most part, it kind of went dormant relatively quickly because of what we saw in Game 5 and then Game 6, forcing that Game 7 and the hype around it. So I'm glad that for the most part, we look back on this World Series, and that is not something that comes straight to mind. And that's definitely a good thing.
As sort of a final post note to the World Series this year, a couple of them. First, the night that they won the World Series, right after the game, in fact, while he was being interviewed by Ken Rosenthal, Carlos Correa proposed to his girlfriend, Daniela Rodriguez, who is 2016's Miss Texas USA, on live television. She accepted. And then yesterday, Justin Verlander and Kate Upton tied the knot in Italy. So, yes, Justin Verlander will, in fact, get 2 rings out of this World Series and a marriage to Kate Upton. But that's neither here nor there. But so a lot of other things coming out. Another interesting sort of side note to this World Series, the Houston Astros became just the second team in history to win a 7-game league championship series and followed up with a 7-game World Series in the same year. Not done since 1985 by the Kansas City Royals, and only the second time it's ever happened. So, without a doubt, just an amazing 2017 World Series. One for the record books for sure. If only we could go back and replay that Game 7 and make it more exciting.
Yeah. Give me a couple of runs from Game 5. Just sprinkle them around Game 7. It would have been just awesome. So congratulations to the Astros, to Carlos Correa, to Justin Verlander and Kate Upton on their nuptials. There was another Upton in the news this week, and that is that the LA Angels.
In fact, an amalgamation of Justin and Kate.
Yes, it is. Another Upton, Justin Upton, went ahead and, for lack of a better term, had a 1-year, $17.5 million extension granted to him on top of his existing contract, where now he basically has a $150.5 million contract over 7 years. That takes him all the way into 2022, because this extension is in conjunction with his existing contract that happened, I believe, with Detroit. So, we saw this coming into the week. Obviously, the Angels made the move for him and Brandon Phillips at the deadline away from Detroit. We knew Detroit was moving on from a lot of their pieces. Obviously, Justin Verlander, the aforementioned one. We saw, the name Michael Fulmer get mentioned. Started moving J.D. Martinez, who, just what a season and postseason that he had with the Diamondbacks. Unfortunately, they had a rough, they hit a buzzsaw in L.A. But, neither of us were overly thrilled with this Justin Upton deal. But you step back and you really take a look at the numbers, and it's not that bad. He's 29 years old, going into his 30-year-old season, still in what is relatively the physical prime of his career. And for the most part, since 2011, a very healthy player hasn't dropped below 150 games played, except for once. That was in 2013, and he played 149. So 150 and above, pretty much for the last 6 years. 29 years old, he's sitting at almost. He'll hit. Should have 1,500 hits within the first month or two, maybe 3 months of the season. He sits at 1,467 career lifetime right now. Has 256 home runs, and we saw a career best from him this year. Yes, his strikeouts are high, but at this point we know that the game doesn't care about that. A career best OPS at 901, a 273 average, which is right up there with some of the best that we have seen from him overall. 109 RBI, easily his best by 7 from 2014. Just all in all, it was not a fantastic extension, but he had a good year. 44 doubles. That's again his best by 6 or by 5 rather. I'm okay with this because the Angels are I think ready to try and challenge for a wild card and for some playoff positioning. They have to just contend with the Astros.
The only thing I think is that I would be a little worried, especially after the fiasco with Albert Pujols and the Angels. I would be worried about paying a guy $28 million the year that he's going to turn 36 while he's playing for you.
Right. It is a very backloaded contract.
But I do like the fact, and we talked about this before we came on the show. I do like the fact that Major League Baseball has moved away from huge contracts in terms of time. And yeah, there's still huge contracts in terms of money, bigger than they have ever been. But at least we're not paying these guys for 10 years when so many times that has turned out to be the wrong idea. You don't want Justin Upton when he's 40.
Right.
But
agree.
But $28 million, I think, is too much to pay him when he's 36. But at the same time, if he can possibly produce in the same manner as he has this year, hitting 35 homers, I think it's a decent investment for the Angels. It's a better investment, I think, than Albert Pujols was.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, and the Cardinals were brilliant in what they did with Pujols because they knew the plantar fasciitis was happening. They saw the breakdown happening in front of them. Like, man, we're not asking you to take a hometown discount. I mean, we'd love for you to, but if you don't want to, that's cool. We're just not going to keep you. And he played the game, as respectfully as he could. He was gracious. Both sides were gracious, and they parted ways, and the Cardinals came out easily on top of that deal. The thing that I will tell you is this, and this is the thing I think, where I think L.A. will find themselves in a better outcome, is that when he went to San Diego for the 1 year that Upton did in 15, he hit .251. I mean, easily it's his third. Aside from his early years, it was one of his worst averages we've seen. He is much better in a warm or controlled environment. That's why he did so well in Arizona. He was hitting 300 in 2009, 273, 289. His highest batting averages came in Arizona, where it's a dome, it's warm, it's comfortable, it's controlled. He goes to Detroit. It was frigid in Detroit opening day in 2015. He hit 246 in Detroit, his only full year there. He hit 279 in the first 125 games, and then went to LA, hit 245. But big picture, you see Upton as a guy who needs that warm weather to feel comfortable, and it's just one of those, I think, mental things that's better for him. So I like what the Angels did. They're putting themselves. They believe that they're ready to go and make some consistent runs for possible postseason berth. I think it's good. We move towards the East Coast, my neck of the woods. Team that was right down the road for spring training the last last decade or so, and now moved. The national skipper, Dave Martinez, was a bench coach for years with the Rays and Cubs. Basically followed Joe Madden around and did did fairly well for them. I actually remember him playing for the Braves his last year in the Bigs in 2001 at 36. But he will become the new Marlins skipper. It's his first professional managerial job, along with Gabe Kapler of the Philadelphia Phillies. So at this point, we have all the manager positions wrapped up. It leaves Joe Girardi in the dark. I think he'll be a broadcaster, probably for ESPN, as they need a manager's perspective, as Buck Showalter and Eric Wedge have since moved on into other ventures. Obviously, Buck with the Orioles, and Wedge, I'm not sure with what team he's at now. Your thoughts on picking a first-year skipper for the Nationals and trying to push this team forward into what has been 2 seasons where they have seriously underachieved?
I think it's a fantastic idea. And Dave Martinez is a name that we've heard get thrown around.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
No. After that we've been heard.
We've been heard. You know what I'm trying to say. It's been a long day. Dave Martinez is a name that we've heard get thrown around in manager discussions before. Last year we heard his name get thrown out a couple of times. It never really materialized in anything. We both thought that maybe he would be a good choice for a Detroit or something like that, who's going to go into a heavy rebuilding situation. But I think this is good for the Nationals. I think it's great for the Nationals because, yes, he's a first-year skipper, but look at the guy. Look at who he has understudied for the last 5 or 6 years. Joe Maddon is one of the best managers in baseball. I don't think there's anybody who can really refute that at this point. He's one of the best managers in baseball. He's been a bench coach for Joe Maddon for the last few years, and he's had the opportunity. This is like Aaron Rodgers studying behind Brett Favre. It's just a great opportunity to learn how to do things the right way to win. And I think Dave Martinez offers just as good of an opportunity to take this team just as far as it's gone in the last couple years under Dusty Baker, and maybe might be the guy who can get them over that next rise in the road. I think it's a good move. As far as Gabe Kapler, I think it's a great move also.
And real quick, the Nationals, I mean, Martinez beat out John Farrell, the former Red Sox skipper who was let go for this job. So the Nationals have a hell of a lot of faith in what Dave Martinez can bring to this ball club.
I think they want freshness in their manager position. I think they've gotten a lot of young talent. They've gotten a lot of young, heavy bats. I think they want someone young and able to relate and someone who has played the game this century to sit down there and manage this team. And I think it's a good move. Gabe Kapler, I think, is also a good move. He's only been out of the league for about 7 years now. Kapler has. Right. I think he last played in 2010 for the Tampa Bay Rays, obviously down from your neck of the woods again.
Yep, you're exactly right.
Never an everyday guy. Never a light up the world guy, but he was part of that 2004 championship team in Boston.
Yep.
And
got himself a ring.
Played well for them, has a ring. I think that having that sort of recent playing experience is a hit or miss thing for managers, but I hope he's going to do well. He's certainly going to be the most fit manager in baseball at this point. I don't know if you've seen pictures of the guy, but he's pretty ripped. He's definitely going to be the most fit manager in baseball at this point. And, maybe that'll put a work ethic into his guys there in Philadelphia who
I agree. I mean,
going into a rebuild.
He definitely has he's from Hollywood. He has the Hollywood looks. A big believer in coconut oil. Obviously, you can tell by the looks. The one thing with Dave Martinez, you're killing me, man. The one thing with Dave Martinez that I was a little bit worried about at first when they hired him, but I like to hear, I'm glad to hear with his vision that he said, quote, "We're not just here to win a playoff game. We're here to win the World Series." So Dave Martinez definitely has the right frame of mind. But no, big picture, I definitely think it is a good hire. It'll be an interesting hire, to say the least. They want something fresh. I still think Girardi, if he was interested, would have been a great one. I don't know if he was even given a formal interview with Washington, but I think if he had, that would have been the most logical step here. But we've seen that Joe Girardi with some really good pitchers. We'll see what Martinez does, and I think Gabe Kapler is in a good scenario where hopefully he has a little bit of slack to go ahead and allow this team to grow. Seven-game series. Hopefully we end up getting more of these as the years continue. I wouldn't mind having another couple of years straight of Game 7 in the World Series. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of days. Obviously, to my getting married next Sunday, so we should be off for a couple of weeks, as I will be a little indisposed the next 2 weeks with all that going on But, man, it's going to be a fun time. I'll make sure to stop and get you a bottle of water when we go out to dinner so I get you that drink that I owe you. And, we're going to have
sir. That's not going to work, sir. That's not how this is going to work.
I did not specify the content of liquid when I said I'll buy you a drink.
Nope. But I'm going to specify it. I will not accept your bottle of water, sir.
Okay. Hey, you know what? It might even be coconut water. Guys, we appreciate y'all sticking with us. Been a great show. I hope that you enjoyed this baseball season as much as we did. We look forward to seeing you back here in a couple of weeks. For Chris, I'm Graham, and everybody here at the Grueling Truth Network. It's the off season, but don't worry, we'll have plenty of stuff coming for you through the next couple of months out of left field. See you guys in a couple of weeks.